Some breaking news here. In a wholly heinous, albeit unsurprising development, Republicans in the House have just passed their budget blueprint by a vote of 217 to 215. What this means is that Medicaid and food stamps are virtually assured to be cut so that the Republicans can pay for tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. Here's how this process works. The budget instructs the following committees to cut the following amounts. The Energy and Commerce Committee will cut $880 billion over 10 years, which is where Medicaid is funded. The Agriculture Committee will cut $230 billion, which is where food stamps are funded. The Education and Workforce Committee will cut $330 billion, which is where student loans are funded. That alone is about $1.5 trillion in cuts. And I want to be clear, if you are instructing those committees to make those cuts, then that is a guarantee that Medicaid and food stamps will be the victims. The money is not available otherwise. What we've just witnessed is Republicans cutting funding to the last lifeline for 85 million Americans who rely on Medicaid and 43 million Americans who rely on food stamps. And look, Republicans are trying to be clever about this. They didn't put the cuts themselves in the budget. They merely instructed the committees to make these cuts so that they can preserve some plausible deniability about what they're doing. Here's Republican Jason Smith, for example, playing that game on Fox.
What do you want to say to those people who are upset about these cuts to the SNAP and nutrition assistance? $230 billion in cuts to SNAP and nutrition assistance?
For one, you can't say that it's cuts to SNAPs. This resolution just says the Ag Committee has to cut more than $200 billion. Okay. What you have is other people like the Democrats going out there saying you're going to cut Medicaid, you're going to cut benefits. Nowhere, Maria, in the resolution does it say what the cuts are. It just sets the goal and the target rate of how much we're going to cut.
See, they're not cutting food stamps. They're merely ordering the Agriculture Committee to cut $230 billion. Which you cannot do unless you cut food stamps. They did this to add a layer of protection so that they can pretend that the thing they're doing is somehow not what they're doing. They didn't want to cut Medicaid in the budget because then no Republicans would want to vote for it, but instruct the Energy and Commerce Committee to make $880 billion in cuts? Well, sure, that's opaque enough that no one will know what it means, except I'm here to tell you exactly what it means. If you intend to cut $880 billion, that means Medicaid is on the chopping block. The Republicans might feel fine playing make-believe, but what they're doing is beyond clear. In fact, here's an example of that very doublespeak from Mike Lawler, who represents a very swingy seat in New York.
Is Medicaid safe or is Medicaid going down? Trump or Johnson? Who's your daddy?
The budget resolution is what is being discussed, has to pass in order to get to reconciliation. The final bill, the reconciliation bill, will be what is negotiated. And there are many of us, myself included, who will not cut Medicaid benefits to our constituents, period.
So when that bill comes to the floor and there's even $1 in Medicaid cuts, you vote?
Well, we're not cutting Medicaid.
Right. But I'm saying, but when that bill comes to the floor.
It has Medicaid cuts now.
Right. If there are even $1 Medicaid cuts, you're a no.
On benefits. If you are eliminating any type of fraud or waste or abuse, that's fine. But benefits to beneficiaries, no.
You understand that Elon and Trump are claiming waste, fraud, and abuse where there is none. So when the bill comes and there's $1 to cuts in Medicaid, you're a no.
I will not cut Medicaid benefits, no.
Right. So you're a no if there's even $1 in cuts to Medicaid. Very good.
Damn it, he was doing so good right there.
Well, because you're giving me politician doublespeak, and it's
I'm not giving you doublespeak.
You are. It's bullshit. You're just saying.
Way more complicated than you want to make it.
It's not complicated.
See what he did there? He said no to cuts to Medicaid, but he knows that Medicaid itself isn't in the bill. It is a directive to the committee to make cuts, which they can only do if Medicaid is slashed. He knows that. He's banking on the notion that you don't. He thinks you're stupid, and then he's going to go back to his purple seat in New York and pretend that he's not responsible for cutting Medicaid, which he just voted to ensure would get cut. And just as bad, all of this is intended to offset spending for, you guessed it, a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. Again, you can see here that all of these cuts to Medicaid, food stamps, student loans, stuff that impacts regular Americans, will occur in order to be able to fund $4.5 trillion in tax cuts that will overwhelmingly benefit the ultra-rich. Here's what I mean. The top 1% will see an average $70,000 decrease in their tax burden. Meanwhile, a middle-class family will see an average $1,000 decrease in their tax burden. And working-class Americans, well, they'll see their tax burden decrease by just a few $100. If you're a regular American, how do you feel about the crumbs that you would get relative to the giveaway that the top 1% are getting? Do you think it's fair that the most vulnerable Americans lose their last lifeline, Medicaid, food stamps, also that the ultra-rich can enjoy a tax cut that is at least 70 times more than what you get? Republicans want to hand you some crumbs in one hand and expect you to be grateful, all the while taking away critical lifelines for Americans with the other hand and hope you don't notice. But I can assure you, we are paying attention. And the most insane part here, all of this is being done in the name of balancing the budget. But there would still be a $2.5 trillion deficit. That means roughly $20 trillion added to the debt over the course of a decade. $20 trillion! In other words, we gut essential programs like food stamps and Medicaid, and we continue exploiting the debt, which is the very thing that the Republicans have spent the last month pretending to care about. And don't take my word for it. Take that of Republican lawmaker Victoria Spartz, who tweeted, "The situation is much worse than it sounds, Representative Thomas Massie and Elon Musk. We are going to accumulate $24 trillion of additional debt in 10 years on top of the $36 trillion we already have, reaching $60 trillion. And guess what? She's right. And guess what else? She just voted for it. For the very bill that she herself admitted would explode the deficit and add ungodly amounts to the debt. Because for the umpteenth time, they do not care about fiscal responsibility, and they never have. Not now, not when they added $7.8 trillion to the debt during the first Trump term. That is branding to give cover to the fact that their sole priority, now, then, and forever, is giving rich people tax cuts paid for by stripping programs that the most vulnerable Americans need to survive. But hey, something pro-life. And mark my words, they've made a mistake. I'm old enough to remember what happened the last time Republicans stripped healthcare away from Americans in order to fund tax cuts for billionaires. In 2018, they did the exact same thing, proposing deep cuts to the Affordable Care Act. And guess what happened in the midterm cycle? They lost the House by the largest margin in modern American history, allowing Democrats to flip a staggering 41 seats that cycle. That is the sleeping giant that they've just awoken. And it's already happening. Despite Republicans' best efforts to hide what they're doing, despite Republicans' hopes that Americans are stupid, despite Republicans' best efforts to obfuscate this budget so that their actions aren't so explicit, Americans are clearly smarter than the GOP is giving them credit for. So my advice to Americans, do not forget this moment. February 25th, 2025. Republicans just fucked with our healthcare. They fucked with the last lifeline for over 100 million Americans. They are hoping that you aren't paying attention. Remember this day so that in November of 2026, they will know exactly why they lost hold of power. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.